What's up and welcome to 17 Non. Today we're going to be making some Vietnamese grilled scallops. You can pretty much find this type of dish anywhere in Vietnam. Fresh scallops, fried shallots, and a spring onion oil is always going to be good. This recipe is nice and simple and extremely delicious. With all that said, let's get straight into it. Welcome to the lab. Let's dive straight into this recipe, pun intended. Here we got 6 hand-dyed scallops that's going to feed around 3 to 4 people. First we need to free these scallops from its shell. Use a blunt knife to scrape along the flat side of the shell. Next, use a spoon to scrape out the scallop and the membrane. This part looks pretty disgusting, but at least we have our scallop. Next, you want to separate the scallop itself from the skirt. This part can be a little bit tricky, but use your thumb to ease out the scallop. There is a small orange segment that's called the coral. Some people use this, but I find there's not much use for it. And now we have that delicious pearl of goodness. Throw away that ugly piece of membrane, then repeat this process for the rest of the scallops. Now we want to give the scallops a quick wash. Briefly wash to remove any excess membrane that's attached to the scallop. As these scallops are pretty big, we want to slice them into halves. This step is optional, it depends on the size of the scallop, but I do find you get more proportion this way. When sliced, place the scallops onto a piece of kitchen paper. Store in the fridge for now and we'll come back to these later. Oh, I almost forgot to say keep the shells. Keep and wash 4 of the concave side of the shells in ice cold water. Scrape the shells clean, then place them onto a baking tray. Roast these guys for around 15 minutes in a hot oven. When nice and clean, place these to one side and we're going to use these to serve the scallops. Moving on, we now want to cook some rice noodles. Rice, vermicelli don't take long to cook at all they need is a bit of hot water. Cover in hot water and allow them to soak for around 15 minutes. To tell when they're cooked, they'll become soft and translucent. When ready, pass the noodles through a fine sieve and chill in ice cold water. When chilled, empty out onto a plate and we'll come back to these at the very end. Now that the main ingredients are ready, it's time to work on a few toppings. Throw around 50 grams of peanuts into a dry hot pan and fry until nice and toasted. Place the peanuts into a pestle and mortar and give them a brief pound. We're after a little bit of texture here, so try not to pound too much. Next up, we want to make some crispy fried shallots. These are never fun to make, and first we're going to need to finely slice around 5 to 6 shallots. Try not to cry like I did, and like I said before, this is never fun. To fry the shallots, place a small saucepan onto a high heat. Add approximately 100 ml of cooking oil, then throw in the shallots. Fry for around 4 to 5 minutes until the shallots become nice and crispy golden brown. You want to keep moving the shallots around as they can tend to burn pretty quickly. When they get to this point, kill the heat and pass them through a fine sieve, keeping the oil to one side. We're going to use this oil to make a separate spring onion oil. And the cool thing about this is that it's already infused from the shallots. Add onto a piece of kitchen paper and evenly spread them out. We want to get rid of as much oil as possible, then when ready, season with a touch of salt. Now let's move on to that spring onion oil I mentioned before. First, we're going to want to mince around 5 grams of ginger. Next, finely chop a bunch of spring onions. We're only going to want to use the green part, and you can use the white part to grow some more spring onions. Now in a saucepan we want to add the oil that we fried the shallots in from before. Turn the heat up to medium, then add the minced ginger first. When the ginger becomes nice and fragrant, we can now throw in all of the sliced spring onions. Give the spring onions a good mix and then we can turn off the heat. This oil goes with a lot of things, but with grilled seafood it's going to be perfect. Remove the oil from the heat and add to a bowl to cool this thing down. Season with a touch of sea salt and 1 tablespoon of fish sauce. The fish sauce will give the oil that little umami bump. Place the oil to one side and now we can cook some scallops. First, we're going to need a really hot pan. Pull out the scallops and season with some sea salt. Now when the pan's nice and hot, add a touch of cooking oil. When smoking hot, we can now add the scallops. If you don't hear that sizzle, then your pan is too cold. When all of the scallops are added, we literally want to fry these guys for 45 seconds on one side. After 45 seconds, flip the scallops over, then fry on the other side for a further 30 seconds or so. Now place the scallops onto a plate and allow to rest. Use some of that spring onion oil we made earlier to season the scallops. And now we want to try and replicate that charred seafood aroma. Add some of the spring onion oil to the scallop shell. Use a pair of tongs to place the shell over a naked flame. When the oil starts to sizzle, remove from the heat, then add some of the rice vermicelli. Careful, as the scallop shell will still be pretty hot, but this will also help heat up the rice vermicelli. Now all we need to do is to bring everything together. This recipe should leave you with 4 scallop shells, but let's just build up one for now. Add a touch more spring onion oil over the noodles, then throw some fried shallots over the top, then pile up the fried scallops. I find 3 is good for one person, but I'll leave this one up to you. Add a touch more spring onion oil and a few extra fried shallots. Finish with a few toasted peanuts and a few sliced birdseye chillies. And that, my friends, is my take on some Vietnamese grilled scallops. Ideally, you want to be cooking the scallops over a naked flame or a barbecue. However, this way of making them at home works just as well. I hope you guys liked this video, and you can find the full recipe in the description box. Let me know in the comments if you get to try out this recipe, and have fun. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe. If you want to see more recipes like this in the future, then click on the like, subscribe, share button and all that other good stuff. It really helps to support the channel. With all that said, I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, and as always, peace.